Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. The silence that followed the warning was not empty. It was filled with the weight of what was to come. Tonight we open a file that was never meant to see the light of day. We delve into the suppressed records of Case File 319J, a forgotten event officially known as the Ethylberg Anomaly. A warning that was not only ignored, but actively erased from public memory. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Welcome to the Obsidian Archive. Our story begins on a frigid night in November 1994 at the now decommissioned Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. In the heart of the jungle, a colossal ear tilted towards the heavens, listening. It wasn't searching for intelligent life, not in the way you might think. It was conducting a deep sky survey, mapping the faint, residual radiation of the cosmos. But on that night, it heard something else, something impossible. It wasn't a language. It wasn't a greeting. It was a pattern, buried deep within the cosmic microwave background noise, a ghost in the machine of the universe. The initial anomaly, logged as AR94B, was a repeating sequence of complex prime numbers, a mathematical structure so profoundly unnatural it was initially flagged as an internal system error. But it wasn't an error. It was stable. It was persistent. And it appeared to originate from everywhere and nowhere at once. It lacked a specific point of origin, a directional signature. It was as if the very fabric of space-time was whispering a secret. The small team of astrophysicists on duty were baffled. They ran every diagnostic, checked every piece of equipment, and even consulted with rival observatories, who, under hushed and unofficial channels, admitted to detecting similar, fleeting ghosts in their own data. Anomalies they had dismissed as instrumental noise. The AR94B signal, however, was different. It was loud. It was clear. A mathematical scream in the eternal silence. Within 72 hours, the project was enveloped in a shroud of secrecy. The data logs were confiscated by an unnamed agency. The team was debriefed, sworn to secrecy under national security acts, and reassigned. The official explanation became tropospheric scattering, a convenient and nebulous catch-all for phenomena that defy easy explanation. The warning, if that's what it was, had been received. And in the cold, sterile halls of power, it was immediately and deliberately filed away. The signal was a statistical improbability, a cosmic aberration that threatened to rewrite our understanding of physics. It suggested that something, long ago, had left an indelible scar on the universe, a non-local repeating echo of a catastrophic event. It was a warning not sent to us, but one we had simply drifted into, like a ship sailing into a fog bank that holds the shape of a forgotten wreck. The universe, it seemed, had a memory, and it was trying to remind us of something we were desperate to forget. Every system has its heretics. Every conspiracy, its Cassandra. For the AR94B signal, that man was Dr. Aris Thorne. A brilliant, abrasive, and uncompromising theoretical physicist, Thorne was one of the original 4 scientists at Arecibo that night. While his colleagues accepted the official explanation and moved on with their careers, Thorne could not. The signal had imprinted itself upon his mind. He saw the elegant, terrifying mathematics not as noise, but as a deliberate message, a monument to a forgotten cataclysm. Dismissed from his university post for his unorthodox and unsubstantiated theories, Thorne became a pariah in the scientific community. He retreated, not into obscurity, but into obsession. He used his savings to construct a private makeshift listening array in the desolate expanse of the New Mexico desert. A collection of salvaged dishes and custom-built receivers, a shrine to the signal from nowhere. His life became a monastic pursuit of a single elusive truth. His days were spent refining algorithms to filter the signal from cosmic noise. His nights were spent staring at cascading data on a flickering monitor, fueled by caffeine and a burning conviction that he was humanity's last watchman. He called it the Echo. He believed it was a form of cosmic archaeology, a remnant of an event so powerful it had permanently altered the quantum foam. In his journals, which were later recovered, Thorne detailed his descent. He described the signal as having a gravitational pull on his consciousness. He lost contact with his family. His friends pleaded with him to abandon his quest. But for Thorne, it was too late. He had seen the pattern. He had heard the warning. He discovered that the prime number sequence wasn't just a sequence, it was a countdown, but one that didn't move through time linearly. It was tied to complex astrophysical alignments, moments when planetary bodies and gravitational fields aligned in specific, rare configurations. Each alignment was a key, unlocking another layer of the signal, making it momentarily stronger, clearer. His obsession led him down rabbit holes of ancient history and forgotten science. He began to suspect that others, throughout time, had also detected this echo. Were ancient myths of cyclical destruction, of Ragnarok, of the Kali Yuga, merely cultural interpretations of a warning embedded in the very structure of our reality? Thorne was no longer just a scientist. He was an archivist of the apocalypse, a lone curator of a truth so profound and terrible that the world had chosen to ignore it. He was a man shouting into the wind, knowing a storm was coming, while everyone else refused to look at the sky. Dr. Thorne's solitary quest took a pivotal turn when a cryptic, anonymous email directed him to a recently declassified archive. Buried within thousands of pages of Cold War-era documents was a single, heavily redacted file, the Ethylberg Memorandum. It was a ghost from a different machine. Project Ethylberg, active from 1962 to 1968, was not a deep space program. It was a deep Earth one. Hidden in a defunct mine shaft in West Virginia, a team of geophysicists and cryptographers used experimental geophones to listen to the planet's core, hoping to monitor Soviet nuclear tests with unprecedented accuracy. But like the team at Arecibo decades later, they found something they weren't looking for. The memorandum described a persistent, low-frequency signal emanating not from across the globe, but from the very center of the Earth. It was not seismic activity. It was structured. It pulsed in a familiar, terrifying pattern, a sequence of prime numbers. The Ethylberg scientists, led by a Dr. Eva Rostova, theorized that the Earth's molten core acted as a massive recording medium, and that extreme geomagnetic events in the planet's distant past had imprinted a memory into its very structure. This wasn't just a planetary phenomenon. Rostova's most radical and most heavily redacted hypothesis was that this was a resonant echo. She proposed that a massive external event, perhaps a gamma-ray burst or a passing gravitational wave from a cosmic cataclysm millions of years ago, had struck the solar system. While the evidence in space had long since dissipated, the event was so powerful that it had left a permanent scar on the planet's core, which now resonated or played back that scar during specific terrestrial and celestial alignments. The memorandum was a chilling parallel to Thorne's own research. The warning wasn't just from the stars. A copy had been recorded beneath his feet. The document detailed the project's abrupt termination. Rostova's team was accused of misinterpreting data and succumbing to ideological contamination. Their findings were deemed a threat to geopolitical stability, a wild card in the delicate balance of the Cold War. The memorandum was classified top secret and buried for over 30 years. For Thorne, the Ethylberg Memorandum was the Rosetta Stone. It proved he wasn't mad. It validated his belief that the warning was real, ancient, and multi-layered. It suggested humanity was living in a house that had been struck by lightning long ago, and the scorch marks were still there if you only knew how to look, both in the attic and in the basement. The signal was a planetary fever, a symptom of a past trauma, warning of a recurring vulnerability. The two signals, one from the cosmos and one from the core, were harmonics of the same ignored truth. Armed with his own decades of research and the explosive corroboration of the Ethylberg Memorandum, Dr. Thorne managed to leverage a single contact from his past to secure a hearing. It was not a public forum, but a clandestine meeting in a soundproofed room deep beneath Washington, D.C. The audience was a shadowy oversight committee known only by its codename, Project Chimera. They were not scientists. They were pragmatists, risk managers, and guardians of the status quo. The men and women who decided which truths were fit for public consumption. Thorne laid it all out. The AR-94B signal, its mathematical structure, the countdown hidden in celestial alignments, and the stunning parallel of the terrestrial signal from the Ethylberg project. He presented his unified theory that the signal was a multi-layered warning system, an echo of a recurring extinction-level event tied to a specific and now rapidly approaching galactic alignment. He wasn't predicting the end of the world. He was presenting evidence of a cyclical natural threat that humanity was, for the first time, capable of understanding and potentially mitigating. He spoke for 3 hours. The committee listened with unnerving stillness, their faces impassive. When he finished, the silence was absolute. The chairman, a man with no name and cold eyes, thanked him for his presentation. Then, the dismissal began. It was not a scientific rebuttal, but a bureaucratic execution. They questioned his methodology, his unsanctioned research. They framed the Ethylberg Memorandum as a Cold War relic, the work of paranoid minds. They spoke of economic stability, of the potential for mass panic, of the unacceptable cost of diverting global resources to address a theoretical threat. One member argued that even if he were right, the revelation would shatter every religious, political, and social structure on the planet. The cure, they argued, would be worse than the disease. The warning was not dismissed because it was unbelievable. It was dismissed because it was inconvenient. Within a week, Thorne's findings, including his copy of the Ethylberg Memorandum, were classified under a new, bespoke security designation. He was issued a national security gag order, threatening imprisonment if he ever spoke of his research again. Project Chimera's final report concluded that Dr. Thorne's theory was a compelling but ultimately non-actionable narrative. The warning was officially ignored. The file was closed. Dr. Aris Thorne, the Cassandra of the cosmos, was sent back into the wilderness, silenced by the very people he sought to save. And in the quiet hum of the universe, the signal continued its countdown, unheard, unheeded, as the final alignment drew ever closer. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some silences are not empty. They are full of answers we are too afraid to hear. Our story begins not with a bang, but with an unnerving, profound quiet. The date was October 12, 1978. The place was Oak Haven, Colorado, a small, isolated mining town nestled deep in the San Juan Mountains. Population, 572. By October 13th, the population was 0. The first call came from a postal worker, a man named Frank Miller, who noted that for 2 days straight, not a single piece of mail had been collected from the Oak Haven post office boxes. More troubling, no one had come out to greet him on his route. The dogs didn't bark. The curtains remained drawn. He called the county sheriff, reporting what he called a dead quiet. The term was tragically prescient. The first deputy to arrive on the scene, a rookie named Carl Spencer, would later describe it in a heavily redacted psychiatric evaluation as a town holding its breath. His patrol car dashboard camera, footage of which remains classified under National Security Directive 78B, captured the initial drive down Main Street. The footage is said to show a perfectly preserved town. Cars were parked neatly on the street, some with keys still in the ignition. In the diner, half-eaten meals sat on tables, coffee still warm in the mugs. A child's bicycle lay on its side on a lawn, its front wheel still spinning slowly in the autumn breeze. There were no signs of a struggle, no violence, no bodies. There was simply nothing. The 572 residents of Oak Haven had vanished from existence. The initial state-level investigation was abruptly halted within 12 hours. A new group arrived, men in unmarked black vehicles wearing sterile environmental suits who identified themselves only as belonging to a transitional response team. They established a 5-mile quarantine zone, citing a potential viral outbreak or chemical leak. But this was a lie. This was the first deployment of what would later be known among intelligence circles as the Blackout Protocol. Oak Haven was not a tragedy to be investigated. It was a data point to be scrubbed. It was the first major test of a phenomenon they didn't understand, and their response was not to warn the world, but to blindfold it. They erased the town, not just physically, but mimetically. Within a year, Oak Haven was removed from all official maps. Its census records were deep-sixed. Its history was systematically rewritten. For the world, Oak Haven never existed. But for a select few, it was the first sounding of an alarm bell that was deliberately and catastrophically muffled. It was the first and perhaps most crucial warning that was ignored. In the official narrative, the one that doesn't exist, there were no survivors of Oak Haven. But the archive is filled with whispers, with loose threads that, when pulled, unravel the official story. One such thread is a man named Elias Vance. Vance wasn't a resident. He was a geologist contracted by the mining company, scheduled to arrive in Oak Haven on the morning of October 13, 1978. He was running late. His truck broke down about 10 miles out. As he worked on the engine, just as the sun began to rise, he witnessed something. His testimony, pieced together from a series of interviews with a disgraced journalist in 1982, is the only known first-hand account. He never claimed to see a ship or creatures or anything so easily categorized. He described a color that wasn't a color, that seemed to wash over the valley where Oakhaven sat. He spoke of a sound, not a sound he heard with his ears, but one he felt in his bones, a low hum that vibrated the world into tune. He said the birds stopped singing, the wind died. For about 15 minutes, the entire valley was encased in a perfect, unnatural stillness. Then it was over. The color faded, the hum ceased, and the world resumed its motion. But, as he would later state, it felt wrong, like a film, where a single frame is missing. When he finally got his truck started and drove into town, he found the scene we described earlier: the empty houses, the warm coffee, the silent streets. Elias Vance did what any sane person would do. He contacted the authorities, and that was his mistake. He was held for 72 hours, questioned not by police, but by men in sharp, unassuming suits who never gave their names. They didn't ask what he saw. They told him what he saw: a gas leak, mass hallucination, the effects of high-altitude sickness. They systematically dismantled his perception of reality, gaslighting him with clinical precision. When he refused to accept their version of events, they destroyed his credibility. A fabricated history of mental illness was leaked to his employer. He was fired. His wife left him, convinced he had lost his mind. Elias Vance became witness zero, the man who saw the truth and was punished for it. He became a ghost, living on the fringes, a paranoid recluse, whose story was a cautionary tale for anyone else who got too close. His testimony was the warning, given a human voice. And that voice was methodically, brutally silenced. The silencing of Elias Vance was not an isolated act of intimidation. It was standard operating procedure. It was one small part of a comprehensive, top-secret directive known only as the Blackout Protocol. This was not merely a cover-up. A cover-up implies hiding a crime or a mistake. The Blackout Protocol was something far more profound. It was an attempt to hide a fundamental truth about reality itself. From documents leaked by a now-vanished archivist from the Department of Energy, we can piece together its terrifying scope. The protocol was established in the late 1960s by a clandestine agency known as the National Office for Ontological Security, or NOOS. Their mandate was not national security in the traditional sense, but the security of consensus reality. They were tasked with identifying and neutralizing what their internal documents refer to as ontological incursions, events that defied the known laws of physics and threatened the stability of human perception. Oakhaven was the first large-scale field test of the protocol. Stage 1 was physical containment, establishing a perimeter, seizing all evidence, and removing all witnesses. Stage 2 was informational containment, the systematic scrubbing of all public records. Maps, birth certificates, property deeds, newspaper articles, anything that proved Oakhaven ever existed was either destroyed or altered. Digital records were easier, but in the 1970s, this meant physically infiltrating archives and replacing documents. It was a silent, invisible war against history. Stage 3 was the most insidious: mimetic containment. This involved the discrediting of any surviving witnesses, like Elias Vance, and the careful introduction of disinformation to muddy the waters. Stories of chemical spills, cult activities, or secret military experiments were seeded into nearby communities to provide plausible, albeit false, explanations for the military presence. The goal was to ensure that even if the story of a disappearing town leaked, it would be dismissed as a bizarre but explainable conspiracy theory. The architects of the Blackout Protocol believed they were protecting humanity from a truth it couldn't handle. They argued that knowledge of such phenomena would lead to mass panic and the collapse of civilization. But the archive suggests a different motive: fear. They weren't protecting us. They were protecting their own power structure, which was built on the illusion that they were in control. The Oakhaven incident proved they were not. The warning wasn't just that something was out there. It was that the very people we trusted to protect us were willing to sacrifice truth for the sake of order. They chose to blind us, hoping the monster would go away if no one was looking at it. Oakhaven was not the end. It was the beginning. Once you know what to look for, the signature of the Blackout Protocol, you begin to see it everywhere. The archive is littered with its ghosts. Case file 734, a remote dew line station in the Arctic. Call sign Iceworm. In 1981, it went silent. The official report cites a catastrophic generator fire, but a single heavily redacted memo refers to anomalous auditory phenomena and the implementation of Protocol B. The 12 technicians stationed there were declared dead, but their bodies were never recovered. Case File 921, the USS Emory, a fast-attack submarine on a covert patrol in the Pacific in 1986. It vanished without a trace. The Navy's official stance is that it was lost at sea, a tragic accident. But tucked away in a subfolder is a partial transcript of its final communication, most of which is blacked out. The only legible phrases are non-Euclidean contact and the sea is wrong. The 130 crew members are now just names on a memorial wall. These are not isolated incidents, they are a pattern. A logging camp in Oregon, a scientific research outpost in Antarctica, a small desert community in Nevada. Each time, the same pattern emerges. A strange event, a sudden silence, and the swift, silent cleanup by the news. The public is fed a plausible story, and the truth is buried under layers of redaction. The most disturbing files, however, are not about the initial incidents, but about the aftermath. They are the missing persons reports, not the residents of the towns or the crews of the vessels, but the people who came after, the journalists who got too close, the local law enforcement officers who refused to drop their investigation, the scientists who noticed the strange energy readings, even agents within the noose itself. One file details the case of a cartographer who noticed the discrepancies in revised geological surveys and began mapping the ghost locations. He disappeared from his locked apartment in 1991. His work and all his data vanished with him. These individuals represent the secondary victims of the ignored warning. They were not taken by the phenomenon itself, but by the system designed to hide it. They were silenced because they were starting to connect the dots, to see the terrible mosaic being assembled from these disparate tragedies. They understood that these weren't random events, but escalating steps. The warning wasn't a single shout. It was a series of ever louder whispers. And now, the whispers are becoming a roar, threatening to tear down the very walls of secrecy that were built to contain them. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some truths are not buried. They are replaced. Narrator. The official story is always the cleanest. It's polished, packaged, and presented with authority. In the case of the Ethylberg incident, the narrative was sealed within 72 hours. The headlines were uniform, the press conferences concise. A tragic industrial accident. An unforeseen cascade failure in the facility's experimental energy core. A national tragedy, but a manageable one. The corporation behind the project, Omnicorp, issued a statement expressing its deepest regrets, promising full cooperation with the investigation, an investigation they would largely oversee. They presented a scapegoat, a convenient villain for a story that needed one. His name was Dr. Alistair Thorne. According to the official report, declassified as Document 734 Alpha, Thorne was a brilliant but unstable researcher. A man whose personal grievances and apocalyptic delusions, as the report termed them, led him to sabotage the very project he helped create. They painted him as a disgruntled employee, citing internal memos that detailed his erratic behavior and unsubstantiated paranoid theories about the core's fundamental operations. They claimed his warnings, submitted in the weeks leading up to the incident, were not the words of a prescient mind, but the ravings of a man on the edge, desperate for attention. The media fed a steady diet of curated leaks and expert testimonials from Omnicorp-approved scientists dutifully echoed this story. Thorne became a cautionary tale, a specter of scientific hubris. But even the most polished surfaces have cracks. If you look closely at the counter-narrative, the official story begins to unravel. Why, for instance, were 3 of Thorne's closest colleagues, all of whom co-signed his initial safety concerns, abruptly transferred to overseas projects with non-disclosure agreements just 2 weeks before the incident? The official record states these were routine reassignments. Why was Thorne's own security clearance revoked, not for erratic behavior, but specifically for unauthorized resonance experiments, a field the facility publicly claimed wasn't even being researched? And then there are the whispers from the town of Havenwood, the small community that sat in the shadow of the Ethylberg facility. Initial reports to local law enforcement, before the federal gag order came down, spoke of strange phenomena, pets disappearing, televisions and radios turning on by themselves, and a persistent, low-frequency hum that locals said felt like it was in their bones. These accounts align perfectly with the secondary effects outlined in Thorne's ignored final report. These eyewitness testimonies were later officially dismissed as mass hysteria, fueled by the incident itself. The counter-narrative was an elegant piece of fiction, designed to close the book on Ethylberg. But it created a vacuum, and into that vacuum, other, darker truths began to seep. Narrator: every official story has its own ghost, an echo of the truth that refuses to be silenced. For the Ethylberg incident, that ghost lives in the static. Long after the news cameras left and the cleanup crews in hazmat suits departed, rumors began to circulate in niche online forums and among disgraced academics. They spoke of the Thorne Tapes, a series of audio logs Alistair Thorne was rumored to have recorded in secret during his final weeks. These tapes were considered a holy grail for researchers of the unexplained, a potential first-hand account of what truly happened. Most are believed to be lost or destroyed, but fragments have surfaced. They are of poor quality, degraded, and filled with a strange, pervasive static that seems to actively fight against the spoken words. Audio fragment? Log entry. I don't know the date. The resonance is, it's changing the frequency. They think it's just interference, just background noise. But it's not noise, it's a voice, it's listening. The hum is a conversation, and we are the interruption. They built this thing to create energy, but it's a tuning fork. And something is starting to vibrate on the same frequency. I tried to warn them that the warning itself was being overheard. Narrator. The official explanation for the facility's pervasive electronic interference was a flaw in the core's electromagnetic shielding. But Thorne believed something else entirely. We spoke with a former Ethylberg technician who agreed to an interview only if his identity was concealed. He was a junior engineer, but he worked in a lab adjacent to Thorne's. Anonymous source. Everyone called it the hum. It was this low vibration. You'd feel it in your teeth. Management said it was the coolant pumps, the particle accelerator spooling up, whatever. Standard procedure. But Thorne, he was obsessed with it. He'd spend hours in his lab with these custom-built oscilloscopes, just watching the static. He told me once, he said, they're looking for a signal in the noise, but they don't understand the noise is the signal. He believed the core wasn't just generating power. Its specific resonance was thinning the barrier between here and somewhere else. He said the static was the sound of that other place bleeding through. We all thought he was crazy. We laughed at him. Then, after the incident, no one was laughing. The hum stopped. The silence was worse, somehow. Narrator. Thorne's theory was that the Ethylberg core, in its search for limitless energy, had inadvertently created a beacon. A signal broadcasting our existence into a place we were never meant to contact. The warnings he filed were not just about a potential meltdown. They were about what the facility's unique energy signature was attracting. The static wasn't just interference, it was the sound of a reply. A reply that no one, except Alistair Thorne, was willing to hear. Narrator. History remembers Alistair Thorne as a madman, a footnote in a corporate tragedy. But to Elena Thorne, he was the father she never knew. Estranged from him since childhood, Elena grew up believing the official story. To her, her father was a brilliant man who succumbed to paranoia, a man whose work consumed and ultimately destroyed him. For 2 decades, she lived with that version of the truth, a simple, painful narrative that allowed her to move on. That narrative shattered on a rainy Tuesday in October. An anonymous package arrived at her apartment. Inside there was no note, only a single leather-bound journal. His journal. It was filled with complex equations and schematics she couldn't comprehend, but woven between the scientific notations were personal entries, written in a frantic, desperate hand. They were not the words of a madman, but of a deeply frightened, isolated scientist, watching a catastrophe unfold in slow motion. Narrator. This discovery ignited a quest for the truth. Elena, an architectural archivist by trade, began applying her skills not to old buildings, but to the ruins of her father's life. We see her journey begin, a clandestine trip to the perimeter of the now condemned Ethylberg facility, a desolate, fenced-off scar on the landscape. She tracks down her father's former colleagues, only to find a pattern of fear and silence. One has died in a convenient car accident. Another refuses to speak, his eyes filled with a terror that 20 years has not erased. A third has simply vanished. Undeterred, Elena turns her small apartment into an investigation headquarters. One wall becomes a chaotic mural of evidence, maps of the Ethylberg site, photographs of key personnel, timelines, and printouts of obscure physics papers, all connected by a web of red string. Her search is no longer just about clearing her father's name. It has become an obsession, a conversation with a ghost. She is piecing together the man she never knew through the warning he left behind, discovering a father not defined by madness, but by a terrible, lonely courage. She is searching for the truth of his life, unaware that the truth of his death and the danger he uncovered is now searching for her. Narrator: in the world of secrets, truth is never given. It is taken, piece by agonizing piece. After 2 years of relentless petitions and legal battles, Elena Thorne's Freedom of Information Act request was finally answered. A single slender file arrived from the Department of Energy. It was the official Oversight Committee report on the Ethylberg incident. But it was a skeleton, picked clean of its substance, with over 90% of its content hidden beneath the stark, black bars of redaction. To the untrained eye, it was useless. But to Elena and the forensic document analysts she consulted, the fragments were a Rosetta Stone. The placement of the redactions, the length of the blacked out sections, the few isolated words left visible, they told a story the censors never intended. Narrator, page 4, a reference to the core's output. The sentence reads, "The energy signature was not consistent with, but instead showed markers of a non-terrestrial. The word hangs in the air, a direct contradiction to the industrial accident narrative." Page 12, a summary of internal threats. It details 1. Dr. Thorne's continued dissemination of his Cassandra complex hypothesis poses a significant risk to project continuity. They gave his warning a name, trivializing it as a psychological condition. Page 27 is the most chilling. It's a memo from Omnicorp Security to the Oversight Committee, dated just 3 days before the incident. It recommends a course of action regarding Thorne. Most of it is redacted, but the visible fragments are damning. Immediate containment of asset, classified seizure of all research materials to prevent wider. They weren't just ignoring him, they were actively silencing him. The final piece of the puzzle comes from an appendix, a technical analysis of the core's final moments. A single line of data is left unredacted, showing a massive energy spike that coincides with a previously unexplained seismic event thousands of miles away. The note next to it, from an unknown analyst, is a single, handwritten sentence. Resonance cascade achieved. The door is open. Consequences as predicted by Thorne. The fragments don't provide the whole picture, but they provide a terrifying outline. Alistair Thorne was not a saboteur. He was a prophet. His warning was not just ignored, it was suppressed. And the Ethylberg incident was not an ending. It was a beginning. The declassified documents prove that the authorities knew, they understood the warning, and they let it happen anyway. The only remaining question is, why? Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some truths are buried for a reason. Narrator: welcome back to the Obsidian Archive. We've examined the declassified documents, the redacted testimonies, and the whispers that became inconvenient truths. Now we turn our attention from paper trails to the Earth itself. Because when a warning of this magnitude is ignored, it doesn't just vanish. It carves itself into the very bedrock of our world. We call it the Karman Anomaly, but the locals have a simpler, more potent name, the scar. From 30,000 feet, it looks like a wound, a jagged 80-kilometer-long fissure that refuses to heal, cutting through the desolate expanse of the Atacama. Official geological surveys label it a unique but natural tectonic feature, a product of ancient seismic stress. But our sources, a collection of disgraced geophysicists and silenced government researchers, tell a different story. They call it Exhibit A in the case of the warning that was ignored. For 2 decades prior to the event, Dr. Aris Thorne and his team at the Global Seismology Initiative had been monitoring the region. Their instruments, far more sensitive than anything publicly acknowledged, detected a low-frequency hum emanating from deep within the lithosphere. It wasn't natural. It was rhythmic, almost intelligent. Thorne's team compiled thousands of pages of data, cross-referencing deep Earth sonograms with satellite gravimetry readings. The conclusion was unavoidable and terrifying. A massive, unknown energy source was building pressure along a previously dormant fault line. Their final report, submitted 18 months before the event, was unequivocal. It predicted a catastrophic crustal displacement with a 95% probability. The warning wasn't just dismissed, it was actively suppressed. We have obtained redacted internal memos from the period. They speak of containing public panic and avoiding economic disruption. Thorne was labeled an alarmist, his funding was cut, and his team was systematically disbanded and reassigned. They were silenced. But the Earth doesn't care for politics or economics. On October 7th, the hum stopped. And then, the ground tore itself open. It wasn't an earthquake in the conventional sense. There was no epicenter from which seismic waves radiated. The entire 80-kilometer line fractured simultaneously, releasing a wave of infrasonic energy that shattered windows hundreds of miles away and was detected by monitoring stations on the opposite side of the planet. The scar is not a natural feature. It is a tombstone, a permanent physical reminder of a catastrophe that was not only foreseen but meticulously documented. It is the price of hubris, etched into the face of the planet for all to see, a silent testament to the voices that cried out in the wilderness, only to be swallowed by the silence of bureaucracy. Narrator: the existence of the Kármán anomaly, the scar, proves the warning was real. The declassified memos prove it was received. So the critical question remains: why was it ignored? The answer is not one of simple incompetence. The truth is far more insidious. Welcome to the echo chamber. In the corridors of power where Dr. Thorne's report landed, a carefully constructed reality had been established, one that was fundamentally incapable of processing an external threat of this nature. We've analyzed the psychological profiles of the key decision-makers on the Oversight Committee, men and women who held the fate of millions in their hands. They weren't villains in a classical sense. They were products of a system designed to perpetuate itself. This system, codenamed Project Chimera, according to one of our anonymous sources, was an information filtration protocol. It was designed to reinforce a specific worldview, one of unwavering stability and control. Any data that contradicted this core belief was algorithmically and procedurally flagged as low confidence or statistically deviant. Dr. Thorne's report, with its terrifyingly high probability of disaster, was so far outside the accepted parameters that the system treated it as an error. It was a self-correcting loop of confirmation bias. Think of it as a room lined with mirrors. The people inside can only see reflections of themselves and their own preconceived notions. Anyone trying to shout a warning from the outside is unheard, their voice muffled by the soundproofing of institutional arrogance. We see evidence of this in the minutes of the committee meetings. Phrases like maintaining the integrity of the predictive models and adherence to established threat matrices appear repeatedly. They were more concerned with the purity of their system than the reality it was supposed to reflect. Dr. Thorne wasn't just fighting against disbelief, he was fighting against an entire architecture of denial. His data was a foreign body that the system's immune response immediately sought to reject. This is the echo chamber theory. It wasn't that they didn't believe the warning. It's that they were psychologically and technologically incapable of hearing it. The committee members received filtered summaries, their aides were instructed to downplay external variables, and the final briefings were stripped of all alarming language. The warning was neutralized, piece by piece, as it moved up the chain of command, until all that remained was a footnote in a quarterly risk assessment. The catastrophe was not an act of God. It was an act of systemic, deliberate deafness. The system wasn't broken. It worked exactly as it was designed to. It protected itself, even at the cost of reality. Narrator: a geologic scar can be mapped, an echo chamber can be theorized. But the true cost of an ignored warning is measured in human lives, in shattered families, and in the ghosts that haunt the generations that follow. The official narrative of the event speaks of a resettlement program and economic assistance. But for the people of the fracture zone, these are hollow words. We traveled to the periphery towns, the ones that weren't wiped from the map but were left permanently altered, living in the shadow of the scar. We found a culture defined by loss and a deep, abiding mistrust of authority. They call themselves the children of the hum, referring to the low-frequency noise their parents and grandparents tried to tell the world about. Here, the warning that was ignored is not a historical event. It is folklore. It is family history. It is a lullaby sung to children to teach them not to trust the words of distant men in clean suits. We spoke to Elena, a third-generation survivor. Her grandfather was a technician on Dr. Thorne's team. He died of a broken heart long before the ground split, she tells us, her voice quiet but firm. He tried to warn everyone. He showed them the charts. They laughed at him. After the event, he never spoke of it again, but at night we could hear him weeping, that silence, that grief. We inherited it. This is the core of generational trauma. It's more than just memory. It's a physiological and psychological inheritance. Studies of the fracture zone population show abnormally high rates of anxiety disorders, chronic stress, and a peculiar phobia known as terraphobia, a persistent, irrational fear of the ground itself. Children draw pictures of the earth cracking open. They wake up from nightmares of a low, humming sound. The trauma has been encoded into their cultural DNA. The government's suppression of the truth created a second, more insidious wound. By refusing to acknowledge the warning, they invalidated the suffering of the survivors. They erased their reality, telling them that the catastrophe was an unavoidable natural disaster, a lie that prevented any form of collective healing or justice. The human cost isn't just the initial death toll, which is believed to be vastly higher than the official figures. It's in the decades of lives lived with the knowledge that it all could have been prevented. It's in the vacant stares of the old, the anxious eyes of the young, and the empty chairs at every dinner table. The scar on the land is visible from space, but the scars on these people are invisible and they run infinitely deeper. Narrator, we have analyzed the evidence, we have explored the reasons, and we have witnessed the consequences. Now we present the final piece of the puzzle, an artifact from the heart of the moment, the final cry into the void. This is the audio file that has circulated in the darkest corners of the web for years, dismissed as a hoax by official sources. But through forensic voice analysis and cross-referencing with Dr. Thorne's private journals, we believe with 98% certainty that this is authentic. This is the final transmission from the Atacama monitoring station, recorded just minutes before the event. The voice you will hear is that of Dr. Aris Thorne himself. He had defied his shutdown order, staying at his post with a skeleton crew, hoping until the very last second that someone, anyone, would listen. Dr. Thorne. Log entry, October 7th. The time is 0451 Zulu. The amplitude of the resonance it's gone exponential. All our models are broken. The containment field simulations, what a joke. The energy readings are off the scale. It's not a wave, it's a rupture. A singular synchronous event. The entire 80-kilometer fault is glowing on the deep scan sonar. Glowing. God, I wish they could see this. Dr. Thorne, I'm broadcasting this on all emergency frequencies, though I doubt anyone is listening. If you are hearing this, if anyone is left to hear this, it didn't have to happen. We gave them 18 months. We gave them the data. We gave them the truth. They called it fear-mongering. They told me to stand down, to reevaluate the data within acceptable parameters. There are no acceptable parameters for this. Nature doesn't negotiate. Dr. Thorne, Maria, if you ever get this, I'm sorry. I should have left with you. But someone had to stay. Someone had to bear witness, to document the cost of willful ignorance. The ground is vibrating. The lights are flickering. It's here. Oh God, it's beautiful. Narrator, it didn't have to happen. Those are the words that echo from the past, the final desperate testament from the man who saw what was coming. He wasn't just a scientist recording data. He was a sentinel at the edge of a precipice, shouting a warning that was deliberately and systematically ignored. His final transmission is not just a recording of a disaster. It is an indictment. And it is the ghost that will forever haunt the silence that followed. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some truths are not buried, they are simply filed away. Within the monolithic concrete walls of the Northern Data Processing Center, known to its few dozen employees only as the Quarry, worked a man named Elias Vance. He was not a field agent or a high-level director. He was a chronospatial data analyst, a title so esoteric it was designed to deflect further questions. His job was to stare into the abyss of raw, unstructured data streams from global sensor networks and find the ghosts, the patterns that shouldn't exist. For 6 years, it had been a job of mind-numbing routine. Until Tuesday, March 12th. That morning, Vance noticed a signal, a whisper beneath the roar of global information. It was a low-frequency resonance, a rhythmic pulse that appeared simultaneously across 3 separate, supposedly unconnected networks. A deep-sea acoustic sensor in the Pacific, a seismic station in the Ural Mountains, and a defunct atmospheric satellite believed to be mere space junk. Individually, they were noise. Together, They were a symphony of the impossible. He spent the next 72 hours without sleep, fueled by caffeine and a growing sense of cold dread. He cross-referenced, back-tested, and ran every diagnostic he could. The pattern was real. It was not a glitch. It was a countdown. His report, filed under the designation Project Cassandra, was 48 pages of dense technical prose, but its conclusion was stark and terrifyingly simple. A synchronized, cascading system failure was imminent across critical global infrastructure, triggered by this resonance. The final page projected a 97% probability of the event occurring in exactly 4 weeks. He sent it directly to his superior, Director Farrow. The reply came not in a memo, but in person. Farrow, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with institutional skepticism, stood over Vance's desk, the printed report held delicately between 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. "Elias," he said, his voice low and devoid of emotion, "this is speculative. You're connecting unrelated phenomena based on a correlational artifact. The satellite is dead, the seismic station is known for ghost readings, and the hydrophone is likely picking up Russian submarine drills. It's elegant fiction." Vance tried to argue, pointing to the mathematical certainty, the impossibly low probability of it being a coincidence. But Farrow was unmoved. "We do not act on fiction," he stated flatly. "We act on verified intelligence. Bury it. Consider this a creative exercise and get back to your assigned metrics." The order was an execution. Vance was to not only cease his research, but to delete his findings. That night, sitting in his sterile apartment, the city lights blinking indifferently outside, Elias Vance understood the chilling reality of his position. He was a fire alarm ringing in a soundproof room. He had seen the future, and his warning was not just ignored. It was ordered to have never existed. He made a choice. He copied everything onto a single, encrypted hard drive, a final, desperate act of professional defiance. The institutional silence that descended upon Elias Vance was not unique. It was a single, localized symptom of a much wider, more insidious disease, a global pandemic of deliberate ignorance. While Vance was being reprimanded in the sterile confines of the quarry, thousands of miles away, other dissenting voices were being systematically muffled. In a seismology lab at the University of Kyoto, Dr. Kenji Tanaka was frantically trying to convince his colleagues that the recent micro-tremors detected deep beneath the Izu Ogasawara Trench were not tectonic. They were too regular, too artificial. His pleas for an official investigation were dismissed as the product of an overactive imagination. His funding quietly reallocated to more promising research. In Germany, at a private communications intelligence firm outside Berlin, a young cryptographer named Lena Richter intercepted a series of encrypted bursts originating from a seemingly empty stretch of the Black Forest. The transmissions used a dead cipher, one associated with a Cold War-era stay-behind network that was supposed to have been dismantled decades ago. Her report on a potential ghost network was flagged by her superiors as unactionable historical noise and archived without review. In the Atacama Desert in Chile, an astronomer calibrating a new radio telescope logged a recurring narrow-band signal. It was faint, easily mistaken for background static, but its periodicity was mathematically perfect. He shared his findings on an internal server, only to have them removed by a system administrator within the hour, with a curt note citing protocol violations regarding unverified celestial phenomena. These were not isolated incidents. They were pieces of a mosaic scattered across the globe. Each analyst, each scientist, saw only their single baffling tile. They were unaware of the others. But if you were to plot them on a map, a terrifying picture would begin to emerge. The resonance Vance detected was the carrier wave. Tanaka's artificial tremors, Richter's ghost network, the astronomer's perfect signal, they were all nodes in a global system, humming in unison. This wasn't a failure to connect the dots. It was a systemic refusal to see the pattern. Each warning was contained within its own bureaucratic silo, its significance deliberately minimized by gatekeepers like Director Farrow. Why? Was it incompetence on a global scale, or was it something more coordinated? A conspiracy of silence, where a select few understood the full picture and actively worked to keep it hidden, ensuring that the disparate voices of warning would never find each other and realize the true, horrifying scale of the impending catastrophe. After Elias Vance was quietly forced into early retirement, officially for health reasons, his entire workstation was decommissioned. His files, his data, his 48-page report, everything was wiped from the central servers. But physical objects are harder to erase than digital ones. The encrypted hard drive he created, his final act of defiance, became a problem for Director Farrow. It couldn't be destroyed, as per obscure data retention protocols from a bygone era. Nor could it be decrypted and analyzed, as that would create a new official record of the very warning Farrow had ordered buried. So, a third option was chosen. The hard drive was designated as Level 9 Contaminated Data and placed into a standard issue, lead-lined containment box. The box was sealed with tamper-proof cryptographic locks, assigned a 9-digit alphanumeric code, and logged into the deep storage inventory. It was then transported to the Iron Mountain Archival Facility, a sprawling subterranean complex built into a hollowed-out granite mountain. There, in a climate-controlled vault designated Sub-Level Zeta, it was placed on a steel shelf amongst thousands of identical boxes. It became Item 734 Delta, the unopened box. For years, it sat in the cold and the dark, a silent monument to a disregarded prophecy. What secrets does it hold? To the few archivists and conspiracy researchers who have heard whispers of its existence, Item 734 Delta is a holy grail. It's more than just Vance's original data. It is believed to contain his private logs, his speculative algorithms, and most importantly, his analysis of the signal's source code. Some theorists believe the box contains definitive proof of non-human intelligence using our own networks against us. Others speculate it holds the key to a geoengineering weapon being tested by a shadow government, with the resonance being a side effect. A more chilling theory suggests Vance had stumbled upon a pre-cognitive signal, a mathematical echo of a future disaster, rippling backwards through time. The box represents the ultimate unknown. Its contents could either validate Vance's sanity or expose an even deeper layer of conspiracy. But the true mystery is not what's inside the box, but the silence that surrounds it. No one has ever filed a request to open it. No one has ever officially acknowledged its specific contents. The cryptographic keys required to unlock it are said to be divided among 3 individuals who are unknown to each other. The box was designed not just to store information, but to make it permanently inaccessible. It is a tomb for a warning, a sarcophagus for a truth that someone somewhere decided the world was not ready to hear. Exactly 4 weeks after Elias Vance was dismissed, the lights went out. It began in the financial district of Hong Kong, a cascading power grid failure that spread across the continent in minutes. Then, communication satellites began tumbling from their orbits. Global logistics chains seized up as automated port systems crashed. It wasn't an explosion or an attack. It was a quiet, systemic collapse. The imminent, cascading system failure that Vance had predicted in his report had come to pass. The world didn't end, but it was irrevocably broken. The recovery took years, and the Great Unraveling, as historians called it, was officially blamed on a perfect storm of solar flares, software bugs, and poor infrastructure maintenance. It was a comfortable, blameless explanation. It required no accountability. No one ever mentioned Project Cassandra. No one spoke of Elias Vance. His name does not appear in any official inquiry or report. He vanished from all public records, his existence scrubbed clean. Director Farrow retired with a full pension and a commendation for his steady leadership during the crisis. The seismologist in Kyoto, the cryptographer in Berlin, the astronomer in Chile, their minor, dismissed warnings were buried under the rubble of the global event they might have helped prevent. Their careers stalled, and they faded into obscurity. The lingering silence is perhaps the most terrifying part of this story. The unopened box, item 734 Delta, remains in its subterranean vault, gathering dust. The warning it contains is now history. The question is no longer what might happen, but why it was allowed to happen. Who benefited from the silence? Who understood the full scope of the coming collapse but chose to watch it burn rather than heed the alarm? The silence itself is an answer. It speaks to a level of control and foresight that is profoundly disturbing. It suggests that the unraveling was not an accident. For some hidden architect, it may have been an objective. The ignored warning was not a failure of the system. It was a feature. Today, as we rebuild our interconnected world, we are haunted by the echoes of those muffled voices. We are left to wonder how many other analysts like Elias Vance are out there right now, staring into the digital abyss, seeing a new pattern emerge. And we must ask ourselves the most critical question of all. When the next warning comes, will anyone be listening? Or will its truth simply be filed away, locked in a box, waiting for a future that will never come?